Today I'm going to be talking to you about my view of the relationship between faith and learning. Let's look at a couple definitions first. The definition of faith that I've found is faith can be considered the persuasion of one's beliefs or worldview. For us believers, faith is God's divine persuasion of His will. Learning, according to Cosgrove in our text, is academic knowledge from the sciences and the arts. Now, let's look at how a relationship would look between these two, or how it can play out. A relationship between two or more, according to a biblical worldview, is one that always encourages one another, that supports each other, but also lovingly rebukes and corrects each other, and one where they are both on the giving end to each other and never taking away from one another. To me, they are like strands interwoven together, creating an even stronger piece of rope or cord. If we look at the scripture in Ecclesiastes, this gives us I believe it gives us a little better understanding of what a relationship like this can handle and what it can do. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 10 and 12 states, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." The 3 strands in verse 12 can be used in this discussion to represent 1, faith, 2, learning, and 3, you or me, the individual. By themselves, they can be weak and can break within a certain amount of tension placed on them. But if properly woven together, can form a supporting bond that can withstand a lot higher amount of pressure or tension. This is what needs to take place when integrating faith and learning into our own lives. Like in a godly relationship, the relationship between faith and learning should complement each other, meaning one should be positively affected by the other and vice versa, creating within us a more authoritative foundation or worldview. As this relationship becomes more intertwined with one another, then our confidence in what we believe, what we know, and what we think, feel, and act becomes ever increasing and able to withstand the pressures of this fallen world. This does not mean that we will know or understand all truth, but we will become stronger in our faith and knowledge to defend, teach, and apply our Christian worldview. The relationship between faith and learning should humble us to the fact that we do not know everything and limit an egocentric view of the Bible being the only source of truth. The relationship or integration of faith and learning looses us from the fear of an immoral world and binds us to an open mind that all truth is God's truth. Whether it come from pantheists, atheists, or whatever worldview we apply our faith and learning to. With all this said, let's look at a man who knew the relationship between faith and learning more than anyone, and the necessity to interweave these strands of faith and knowledge within himself. Jesus is this man. In Luke chapter 2, verse 52, it says, "And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men." If we look at this closer, the Greek word for grew or increased, which is used in the King James Version, means to mature. And the Greek word for wisdom signifies both spiritual and worldly wisdom. So even at an early age, I do believe he was like 12, Jesus matured in both spiritual and worldly wisdom. And both of these can be considered, the spiritual side could be considered faith, and the worldly side could be considered secular learning. Now, why is this? Because a lot of us a lot of people believe that Jesus had all knowledge from the beginning, but if we read in the study section of my NIV Bible, it says, although Jesus was God, there is no indication that he had all knowledge and wisdom from birth. He seems to have matured like any other boy. So Jesus had to mature just the same way that we do. Jesus knew the importance of the relationship between faith and learning, as his faith affected his learning, directing him to his study of interest, God and mankind. And the more he learned about both the positive and negative aspects of the secular world, the more his faith was affected and matured in God. Now we are to be, as Christians, are to become Christ-like. And in order to do this, we must notice and take to heart that Jesus used this faith and learning. He intertwined them within himself. And these two, the faith and learning, supported each other for him to fulfill his ministry. So we need to do the same.